Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Healing Overflow. And if you are joining us for the first time, welcome to the Healing Overflow family. It's so good to see y'all. Well, I can't see y'all, but y'all can see me. So let me know that you're out there by just, responding. Like, let me know. Just get on the Facebook Healing Overflow page and hit me up. Say what's up. Go to my email. Drop me a line at drtoyjones@gmail.com. Follow me on Twitter. Professor is PRF Toya Jones. And like our page, WXCN Power Radio. We've been talking about for several weeks now, just so many tips and sharing so many tools of healing. And we'll continue to share the various tools and different ways to heal in our community, individually, with our children. I will keep it coming as long as you keep needing it. All right. So listen, as we go through life, healing is a process and we continue to heal all the way through, right? And our methods, they need to change with us. So that's why I am bringing a special guest here today. Her name is Professor Patti Ghubril. Patti is a board-certified art therapist, licensed professional counselor, and art therapy credential supervisor. She is currently an assistant professor of art therapy at Seton Hill University in Greensburg. For many years, she practiced expressive arts and trauma-informed approaches with her clients, her children, youth, and families who've experienced trauma and loss. We are so fortunate to have her. I need to first give a shout out to her wonderful husband, Salim Ghubril. Together, they founded a nonprofit community development organization in Pittsburgh's North Side area. It's a pillar of our community called the Pittsburgh Project. They have 37 years in the game, serving the community, serving the Black community. I am so proud to have Professor Ghubril here today. Put our virtual hands together, or your real hands, I don't care. Clap it up for Professor Ghubril. I'm so used to just calling you Patti.
Yeah, please. Patti is great. Hey, Toya, so great to see you.
So good to see you too. Welcome to Healing Overflow.
Thank you.
Are you staying warm? It's here in Pittsburgh. It is cold, y'all. Cold and snowy.
It's so cold. Yeah, I've got like 2 sweaters on and all of that, but we'll get through this winter like we always do, right?
Somehow.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you had the time and the place, the space to be on our show, because you have such a unique approach to healing, and it is through art. I'm just so curious because, can't nobody tell me I'm not a good artist, because I'll sit up there and paint and draw something and be like, "Hi, what you think?" And then, you ain't selling it nowhere, but I feel so good when I express myself through art, and you are a huge help in lifting my art critic off of my shoulders and helping me to just really get free and use art to cope through problems. I'm just wondering, how in the world did you gravitate towards art? Like, why art?
Yeah, so I think as a child we all have our sort of interests early on. Some of us gravitate towards athletics or music or art or dance, and some people are doing it all, right? As little kids. I have always been interested in like drawing and making stuff. I would take stuff in the house like a lot of kids do, old paper towel rolls and glue sticks and stuff, and just create stuff, right? And so I didn't think much of that as a kid, because I think all kids are doing that kind of thing. The other thing, though, that I was really drawn to is children's book illustrations, interestingly. Like, I would often feel like I was transported to another world in some of those really beautiful picture books. So I started trying to copy like those images and like kind of figure out, how are these artists creating this place of escape for us, right? And then when I got older, I think I just started to understand that art gave us a language without words. And I think that's what's really part of what makes it so powerful, is sometimes we just don't have the words for what we're going through, but we can use art or music or dance or, all these different art forms to give us some insight into what's going on, and also help us express things that are hard to express.
Wow, that art is a language without words. Like that really struck me, because a lot of times when you work with children, especially the little itty bitty ones, they don't have the language to say I'm hurting, or something's wrong, I'm not feeling well, or that really bothered me. And so through art, they can speak to us as adults, and not just therapists, but as adults and as parents. How did you discover that art was a tool that you could communicate, with others, because you didn't just see children in practice, but with children, and that it was a healing tool? How did you discover that?
Sure. Well, I mean, certainly my training as an art therapist was really instrumental in that, because I think many of us go into the field of therapy, yourself included, with a lot of natural, sort of desires and abilities, and some empathy, hopefully, and all those good things that help us be good listeners and sit with folks. But I knew that if I wanted to use the creative process with my clients, I was going to need to get some training to do it in a safe way, because as much as the arts are a powerful form of communication, they are also a powerful form of communication in that they can be overwhelming at times, right? And we've all been, probably heard a piece of music, or seen, a play or a movie even, where we were just really so impacted. And sometimes that can be powerful. Sometimes we need to get up and leave the room because we're so impacted, right? So I think the training was really important. I mean, it's crucial in order to know how to use these tools in a way that's going to be healing and not make things harder for people. But I think there's also just this realization that, as I studied art and art history, like we also have to do, the original forms of therapy were the arts. I mean, I'm talking thousands of years ago, right? Like every culture on the planet, way before we had psychiatrists and psychologists and official people who, have all these alphabet letters like you and I do. People were using the arts in order to deal with their highest highs and their lowest lows. And some of that still remains with us. Like, right, we have some of those sculptures or pottery or even, masks and shields and things like that, all that we're expressing some human need, right? So I think for me, part of what was important about going into this work is helping people remember that innate creativity is in all of them. It's not the domain of a few people who are practicing professional artists, which is how we tend to think of the arts in our culture. But arts are the birthright of, creativity is the birthright of everybody. So there is no reason why we can't draw on that creative power to help us heal.
Nice. And it's such, being a person that used art in therapy as a therapist. I'm not an art therapist. Sure. And I was trained by my art therapist friends in art therapy trainings and videos and demonstrations and things like that throughout the years. And I noticed that communication came easily through art. I remember having clients that were so traumatized by what happened to them, they could not tell me. They could not speak it out of their mouth. And when I pulled out an easel and I pulled out some paint and said nothing and allowed them to paint what they were feeling and what they were thinking, we could then open up the communication. It was amazing to me. And I'm sure you're kind of used to it as an art therapist, but as just a regular old therapist, I said, oh, this is amazing.
It's such a powerful thing, right? Because that's already within that person. We're just kind of giving them a vehicle in order to process it. So
that's incredible. But I'm thinking, like, our viewers are probably thinking, like, I'm not walking around with an easel underneath my arm.
sure.
I don't have like a palette and my little tam to the side and ready to paint. Like, so how can, the community who needs healing, how are they healing through art? Like, how's that working?
Yeah. Well, I think there's always the individual practice, the things that we are all doing to cope. And I know that there's been an increase during this pandemic of people getting those, coloring books and art supplies
Yeah.
and things, because we were all so isolated for so long. We got to fill up this time with something good. I think what's really powerful, though, about community art projects or community initiatives is that it brings the added dimension of the ability to collaborate together and work on something that then can become symbolic of the strengths and resiliency of a community itself.
Wow.
So, we think of oftentimes, and we've been seeing a lot of this across the country with all of the pain that people have been going through, but lots of new murals are going up in communities. Sometimes they're done by professional artists or graffiti artists. But many times they're done by groups of folks who maybe have an arts facilitator, an art therapist, or a social worker working with them in order to kind of say, this is who we are. We're still here. This is what we're about. And in the process of coming together and figuring that out, there's so much, I think, healing that happens because, we know that trauma is about disconnection, right? And this pandemic has been about disconnection. Reconnection is one of the pillars of trauma healing, right? Getting people reconnected to themselves, their bodies, and also their relationships. So, many of the ways that when we go and serve a community or work alongside a community, we really want to hear, like, what is it that they are trying to envision together? And then we will provide the tools and the support to do that. But it's not like we're coming in again, bringing something new to them. We're helping them, bring up what they already have and give it some sort of visual form.
That is so okay. So you just dropped a lot of gold nuggets, and I got to pick them up and try to figure out where to put them all. One thing that you said is, and I'll never ride past an art mural and look at it the same again, because that's the community healing through art. That's them speaking out and having a voice and saying, this is how we feel and this is how we're going to heal. When we write names, on the wall and put pictures and roses and things like that, that is expressing yourself through art and placing those things where that person was fallen. And so that is so powerful for a community. I know that you've done work in juvenile detention centers, and I know you've done women's groups and things like that, and you used art. That's another way to heal, and using the community and opening up the doors, even through the Pittsburgh Project and things like that. Would you like to talk about anything that you've done and used art with community members coming into your facility?
Sure. So yeah, in my years at the Pittsburgh Project, I wore a lot of hats, like we all do in community work. I know you can relate to that, Toya.
You're right.
But one of the obviously the most joyful times for me would be when we could get community members together and do a creative project. And many of them in my early years as an art therapist were very kind and gracious to be, sort of, let's experiment together and see what we can do together. But I worked with a really wonderful group of, it was about 12 or 14 women through a whole year process together that we called Art and Soul. And there were kind of 3 phases to that. The first one was they met together weekly for 3 hours together. And we were working through some themes of resilience using art, but it was very open-ended. So they could kind of come in and work on whatever they wanted to. But I also had some prompts and some activities and invitations for them to work on. But the last hour of that time was always sitting together in a circle and just expressing whatever that art had meant to them and how it related to their journey and how it related to who they were, growing into. Many of these women had lost someone to community violence. And so it was a way for them to also gather and find strength together, but without the focus always being on the loss, but it being on, again, their resilience and the strength of these amazing women. And so then they did, as the middle part of that year, an exhibit of the work that they decided that they had put together. And they invited the community at the project to come, as if we were having like a real gallery showing, with fancy drinks and all of that stuff. And that was really lovely. And then they created a mural as their final project as well to leave for the community. So it was this really rich time together. And some women came in and out of that, but it was a pretty cohesive group. And, they taught me more than I ever gave them. There's no doubt about that.
That is beautiful. I wish I could have been a part of that. That is wonderful. That is such an opportunity for, the community to come together and being together, having gone through whatever they've gone through, and to create something beautiful. Just that process alone is healing. And that just sounds like a wonderful opportunity. I'm wondering, if I was a viewer, I would say, that sounds great, but what can I do to help? And what you taught us today is that art's not just for kids.
Right.
Adults like to play, and I like to paint, and I like to play. Well, we found that out with that business with the art sipping art, or I can't remember what it was called, but who did not go to that, where we're creating art and having fun, sipping wine and things like that. So art isn't just for little kids, it's for adults to heal and to cope with whatever we're going through in our life. So can you give us some tips? Because we, everybody doesn't have an easel. I say we don't, but we do. We have paint supplies and things like that at home, but most people don't. And most people don't know you can find acrylic paint and canvases and things like that at the dollar store.
And it's pretty good stuff too.
Nice and cheap and things like that. So just, I don't know, share with us something that how we can use art to cope. Give us some ideas that we can use.
Yeah. So, you mentioned this earlier in passing about your inner critic. So I always say the place to begin is to have a gentle conversation with your inner critic and let that, that part of you that's always trying to protect you. I think our inner critic is trying to keep us from embarrassing ourselves. But they try too hard, they work too hard, and they need a break. So if we could ask our inner critic to just, go take a walk, go to a movie, whatever, so that we could play. Because
I would tell mine to shut up.
Yeah. Exactly. Because that word play is at the heart of all of this, right? If we can recapture play and experimentation, that's really where our creativity is going to bubble up, is if we just go, I wonder what will happen if I try this, if I put this on this paper, if I, play around with this medium I never have before. So it's not about making art. And I think that even the term art therapist can be off-putting to people, because it's this assumption that we're going to help people make art that's going to go on their wall.
Or we're going to interpret the art.
Yeah, so we're going to interpret it, which we do not do, by the way. But the art is really just the medium itself is what gives us that sense of rest and relaxation and well-being. So, I would say start simple, kind of, maybe walk around the dollar store and see, what are you drawn to? What happens in your body when you look at either colored pencils or crayons or whatever it is? Because you're not too old for crayons as an adult, or watercolor paints or any of that stuff. But it's about, what do you feel drawn to, and what are you willing to just kind of play around with a little bit. And then I have a little activity that I can just kind of walk us through with.
Oh, that would be great.
Model magic, which is our sort of our art therapy secret weapon, because it works for everything. And it kind of, maybe will just give you an idea of how an art medium can relate to this process of helping ourselves cope with the stresses of life and all of that. So just a little bit about clay. So this is air dry clay. If you haven't played with Model Magic, it's different than Play-Doh. And we have a lot of Play-Doh in the house because I have grandkids, but Play-Doh gets crumbly really fast, and to me, it's frustrating. Model Magic is nice and soft and malleable, and it'll do pretty much whatever you want it to. So what I tell people to do is just to take, a little ball of clay, any kind of clay. Play-Doh is fine if that's what you got. And you're just going to make a ball with it, just kind of play with it. But as you're doing that, you're going to want to start paying attention to your breathing just a little bit. Take a deep breath. See if you can kind of access your breathing and just notice it. You don't have to really change it, but just kind of notice what's going on. Are your shoulders up? Are they down? And just kind of see if you can allow the clay to take you into this state where you're a little bit more aware of your need to be calm. And you just play with it for a few minutes, flatten it out, stretch it, and do all that kind of stuff. And then, the other thing that I ask people to do as they're playing with the clay, and you would do this where in a quiet place without me talking to you, but is to think of a memory. And clay is one of the mediums that is considered very, it attaches to memory very quickly. In other words, as we're playing with clay, we're often reminded of things because of the tactile quality of it. So I would invite you, if you're playing with a ball of clay, to think of a pleasant memory. And it can be one that's recent, or it could be one that was, in early childhood. But as you're thinking about that memory, try to imagine everything that your senses would have experienced at that time. So if you're imagining, for example, that you're at a park or a playground, what would you be seeing there? What would you hear? What might your sense of smell be bringing to you? If you had any food, what would the taste be? Or maybe just the taste of what the environment. Sometimes there's salt in the air in certain places. You can taste that. But you're going to bring all of that sensory information to bear as you play with your piece of clay. And then the invitation is to create a small object that's going to remind you of that pleasant memory, that positive memory. So it doesn't matter what it looks like. This is not an object that, again, is a piece of art or that has to be seen by anybody, but you're going to create something that that when you look at it, it's going to represent that memory for you. And as you're making it, just see if you can kind of, again, notice your breathing and immerse yourself in that memory, because the memory is what's kind of helping you stay grounded. Okay. So this just turned out to be a little shape of like a bowl kind of thing. And the nice thing about air dry clay is that it will do just that. It will, if you sit it out, it will just dry, and you can even paint them later, which is kind of fun. Kids like doing that. So do adults. But this object becomes something then that you can look back on and remember the memory, but also kind of how it helped you maybe reduce your sense of stress and just kind of get into a state of flow. So one of the things we know about clay is that for most people, if you play with it for at least 5 minutes, you start to have increases of serotonin in the brain, which of course is like sort of the happy thing, the happy neurochemical in our brain that we need in order to feel calm and relaxed. So Toya, I think my first, suggestion would be to get some Model Magic and just play around with that and see what happens. Okay. Hey.
That is awesome. Thank you so much. Listen, y'all, the full description you can find on the Healing Overflow Facebook page. Great. And we have it all written out for you. I have tried this myself. I've
Mhm.
tried this with others, from little kids to teenagers, and it really is a soothing tool that
Mhm.
can help. And you come up with all kind of shapes. I tried it with my college students too.
Yeah.
They had ashtrays to
Yeah.
butterflies and flowers, grass and the lawn mower, and I'm like, what is all that?
Exactly. Exactly.
Your mind just is allowed to be free for a moment.
Right.
Very
Exactly.
calming.
Yeah.
Very calming.
And of course, this comes in of every kind of color there is, and you can use more than one packet. You could get very elaborate, as you said, you don't just use 5 minutes either. You can hang out and do a whole village if you want of creatures.
I have a box in my office on campus, and I have a bowl full of Marble Magic in my home. So
There you go.
we
Yes.
will reach in there, from the kids to the grown big man that runs around here. We
Yeah.
use, yeah. Tell
Yeah.
us what else before you
Sure.
go.
Sure.
I remember when I started out using art in my
Yeah.
therapy, you suggested just a little kit, just some
Yes.
supplies to get started. And so if I'm a viewer at home, I'm thinking, I'm not really an artist. I know I'm going to check my critic at the
Yeah.
door. What do I need as I walk around, and things jump out at me, but what do I need? Like one of those big pads, or what?
Yeah.
Give me a little starter kit and I'll be on my way.
And I think little is a good word in that, often what works the best for people is if it's something portable that you can just kind of take with you, and it can be in the car. It can be, because oftentimes when we might have 5 minutes to kind of get in that mindful state with some art supplies is not at home when we're dealing with all the things, I mean, it might be, but there's a lot going on at home too, right? With our families and our responsibilities. So when I find myself able to putter with the art and kind of use it for self-soothing is just in those unexpected times when we're like sitting in the parking lot waiting for somebody to come out with their groceries or whatever, and we got 10 minutes and there's nothing else to do except we could scroll our phones, of course, but so simple things to have would be a small pad of paper, and it doesn't have to be fancy drawing paper, but I would say it should be unlined, like plain, a plain pad of white paper, maybe like 4x6, 5x8, something that's just you can grab and go, right? And maybe even have a little bag for these things. A kit, as you said, is a good word. A couple pencils. I like to have like a little, I'm trying to see if I have it in front of me, but just a little pair of scissors, because I like to do collage a lot. So that's like cutting up stuff and pasting it down. So if I travel, I often bring a little kit that has like some cut up magazine images that I could make some sort of collage with. Glue stick, couple pencils, maybe a handful of markers or a Sharpie, and something to, some kind of paper, some kind of just blank paper. So it doesn't have to be much. And then some Model Magic if I just want to, have something to do with my hands like that. So it can start really small. It could be less than $10 to put all that together. It doesn't have to be a big deal. And in fact, you're more likely to use it. I know some people have what they call the fear of the blank page. So like they look at this beautiful white paper and they're like, I don't want to mess that up. Well, if you have cheap paper, you're going to be much more likely to just mess it up,
True. And I remember I started in that little starter kit. Next thing you know, I went and got acrylic paint.
Yeah.
And so now I think I'm fancy. I got, that
Exactly.
chalky stuff. Listen, I'm making all the artists cringe. What's that chalky crayon stuff that y'all use?
You mean chalk pastels or oil pastels?
Yes, oil pastels and chalk. All that was just, now I have that in my kit, but it took me a while to get comfortable with that.
Yeah.
So when you say use what's comfortable,
Yeah.
what you gravitate towards, that's exactly what you need to use. So
Mhm.
I am not a messy person. I don't like all that stuff on my hands, and I'm like, meh, meh, meh.
Mhm.
After a while, I started to need that messiness
Yes.
because I feel a little messy today, and I need to
Mhm.
spread it all over my paper. So just to
Absolutely.
help you understand, viewers, that you can have something very controlled like a colored pencil, but you can go all out and finger paint the mess out of that piece of paper or that canvas. But
Right.
whatever, satisfies your soul, whatever helps you in that moment,
Mhm.
do it.
Yeah, and a couple of other things. I mean, sometimes we have people work with a box, and you can just get. I mean, those can be paper mache boxes that are blank that you would get at Michael's or somewhere like that. But it could also just be any. We all have boxes laying around, and one of the sort of go-to art therapy techniques that I think everybody enjoys is called an inside-outside box.
Ah.
And an inside outside box is very simple, but it does involve like either painting or collage. I think most people kind of enjoy the collage process, but and the invitation is simple. It's on the inside of the box. You're going to create images or art about kind of what's you know the most personal part of you, like maybe the part that you protect, that you may not share with the world, but it's key to who you are, the essence of you. And on the outside of the box is the self that you show the world, the self that maybe those are your roles, who you are in the work life or in your roles in society. And people really enjoy using, again, images cut from magazines or whatever, in order to kind of think through that inside outside process. And you can work on it over time. It doesn't have to be done in one sitting. But again, it's a lovely way to just promote some self-awareness about, how do I think about myself in the outer world and in the inner world? So
Yeah.
just a simple process.
This is wonderful. You're full of so many techniques, and thank you for sharing some of the tools you
Mhm.
use to help others heal. Thank you for helping our communities heal, even specifically our Black communities and our schools, our little ones, all the way to college level. I'm so glad that you are teaching at the college level to show other young art clinicians how to help folks to heal in multicultural backgrounds, genders, and all of the above. So thank you for coming on Healing Overflow to share all of your wealth of knowledge. I call them gold nuggets. It was raining gold nuggets today. Go on the Healing Overflow page to catch Professor Ghubril's full bio, but also I will throw on a lot of the list, the art list, the techniques, the full description of the model magic technique that Professor Ghubril shared with us today will be on the Healing Overflow page. Don't forget to like the Healing Overflow page. Share this video if it was helpful for you, or if you think it would be helpful to others around you. That's how healing overflows to others, and we can all heal. We can all heal. So don't forget to like our WXCN Power Radio Facebook page and watch us on YouTube as well. Thank you, Patti, for being here.
Thanks, Victoria.
I hope you'll come back again and just keep on sharing with our audience. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.